What's up, guys? Welcome to another session of Daily Fantasy Sports. My name's Jericho. My Twitter handle is at InJericho'sWords. I'm going to be trying to do this every day. I did one yesterday. Seemed to get some great feedback from it. So we've got another six-pack of games tonight. I really like the slate. Real quick, before we move on to it, let's talk about how bad Paul George and DeMarcus Cousins decided to fuck our lineups last night. What in the fuck was wrong with DeMarcus Cousins? Just because he's in high altitude, the guy acts like he can't fucking breathe. You're supposed to be a professional athlete, DeMarcus Cousins. Boogie, you fucking lazy piece of shit. And then Paul George, it's hard to rag the guy. He just couldn't find his shot last night. Went 0 of 9 from the three-point line. He's been pretty consistent all year. He's made me a lot of money, so I really won't go down that road of bashing who I think is one of the best players in the NBA. Probably second best, right behind Curry, and I think LeBron is third. Sounds crazy, but if you've watched the guy play it all this year, George, his shot and his defense are unbelievable. LeBron, obviously the best athlete, but that's an argument for another day. Let's jump right in. We've got the Phoenix Suns at the Washington Wizards. The over-under is 213 points, one of the highest of the nights. I think it is the highest of the night. And it's only a 1.5 point spread. The Wizards used to be a good defensive team, but they've really been playing up in pace so far. So I really like targeting games that the Wizards are involved in. And then, of course, Phoenix with the fast backcourt of Knight and Bledsoe. They've really been ramping it up as well. Let's start on the Suns side of things, and then we'll get into the Wizards' injury personal day fucking dilemma that they've got going on. Let's start with Brandon Knight. As I mentioned yesterday, the Knight-Bledsoe dilemma is one that I've yet to peg this year. Every time I roster one guy, the other one seems to go fucking nuts. We're probably looking at the same sort of thing this year, so I'm really not... I don't think I'm going to play either one of these guys. I think they can both hit value, and I think one of them will for sure hit value. I just don't know which one it is, and I really don't want to play the guessing game on a slate like tonight. So let's move on to the Markieff Morris situation. He's questionable right now. If it's decided before locks that he does play, I think he's a great fit in anyone's roster, and I don't think he's going to be on any sort of minutes limit. He's got a great matchup against just a depleted Wizards front court, so I love that. If he is in fact out, obviously we saw John Lure go fucking nuts the other night. I actually rostered him. It was like a last second ordeal when the Markieff news came in. So if Markieff sits, I love Lure. It gives a small bump to guys like Teletovic and Warren in tournaments. So I'm really not opposed to that. If you want to try to risk one of those guys in cash, I'm not going to hate you for it. But Lure's probably the guy I would target in cash over the other two. Tyson Chandler's out, and a lot of people / dumbasses are going to play Alex Lynn. Jared Dudley's playing the 4, and with Gortat, Nene, and Humphreys all out, or doubtful, probably going to be out, the Wizards aren't going to roll out Hollins for 30 minutes tonight. The guy's not even listed on FanDuel, so... Don't play Hollins, you can't. But also do not play Lynn, because I feel like the Wizards are going to go small, and they're probably going to have Dudley move. I hate to say this, but he might move to the 5 tonight. And if he does, the Suns are not going to play Alex Lynn. He won't be able to keep up with that lineup. He won't be able to step out on the perimeter and guard a guy like Dudley. That being said, I love the matchup for Dudley now, but... let's finish up with the Suns. So basically, Brandon Knight or Eric Bledsoe, pick your poison if you want to play one of those guys. Markieff, if he's in, decent play. If he's out, Lure gets a huge bump in my book, and I think he'll play 30-plus minutes and put up a good amount of fantasy points. Let's move on to the Wizards. They're at home. They play a little better at home, especially John Wall. John Wall is going to be the most popular play of the night, and I really don't think it's going to be close. Besides maybe Capella, if everyone's as educated as I think they are. He's not a must-play at 9K. His price jumped up 1,000. But he is a good play, and he's going to see 40 minutes. And the way he's been playing, I feel like he'll have a nice night. He's been shooting, he's been driving. Obviously, the assist that he would get to Gortat on a nightly basis just disappeared, and I really don't like that. But I don't think it's enough to fade him in this sort of matchup in a close game where they're depleted on their bench. Bradley Beal, same thing. I think he's going to hit value tonight. If he doesn't, he'll approach it. He'll be in the 32 to 33 fantasy point range. Really a solid play. I'm not opposed to that either. I'm really not even opposed to stacking them in cash or possibly even in a tournament. I think it's one of the better stacks of the night. Otto Porter. Nobody's going to be on Porter. He might be 10% owned tonight. The guy's going to get a boost in minutes, especially if they go with the small ball lineup, which I expect them to do because there's no way, like I said, that they run Ryan Hollins out there for 30 minutes. Porter's been a piece of shit since Beal came back. Really inconsistent, but he's going to play 40 minutes, and the Suns give up a lot of fantasy points, and somebody's got to get fantasy points for the Wizards. They've got to go somewhere, and Wall and Beal can't get all of them. So I love the Porter play. He's probably going to play the 3 and the 4 tonight, and if that's the case, that's just extra minutes and extra production. Around 30 minutes a game, he's been around 16 to 21 fantasy points. I expect him to get bumped up to 25 to 30 fantasy points tonight, which will hit his value. So the ugly small forward position, not a bad pivot there. Jared Dudley, I did some research on Dudley today. He averages about 0.4 of a fantasy point per minute on the court, and I think he's going to see 40 minutes tonight. So that puts him right at about 16 fantasy points, and I think that's a pretty safe floor. If they go with the small ball like I planned, Dudley's going to hit some threes. He's going to get more rebounds, especially if he steps down to the 5, and he'll get the random assist or steal here and there. I think 16 is a pretty safe floor, and I think he makes for a good value play at a shitty small forward position. So Gary Neal, a guy that I would look at in tournaments. I think he's going to see a lot of extra minutes because he's the only fucking guy that they have off the bench. He's going to see minutes, 25 to 30 probably, and if he gets hot, he could put up 25 to 30 fantasy points. I've seen him do it. So great tournament play if you want to look at Gary Neal, especially in that matchup. Let's move on. We've got the Brooklyn Nets at the New York Knicks. An ugly over-under, 191.5. 3-point spread, so that's good. But both of these teams are slow as fucking molasses. I've never seen anything like it. They're not going to run. They're not going to push the ball. It's not going to be fun basketball. It's not even going to be pretty basketball. Let's start with the Brooklyn Nets. I really don't like anyone here. I don't. They usually play in pace-up matchups, which is why I like targeting guys like Thad Young or Lopez on occasion. Lopez is too expensive to reach value in a game this slow. I just don't see it happening. Thad's a nice tourney play, but I'm not going to roster him in cash, and it's not because of his last game. It's just the matchup. I don't love him against Porzingis, and I really don't think he's going to put up a Thad kind of line where he gets 35 to 40 fantasy points. So I'm not going there. And then Jack, although he has a decent matchup, it's just too slow of a game. So nothing that I see from Brooklyn outside of a Thad tournament play. The New York Knicks, Carmelo is a really interesting play tonight. His price is down. It's either 81 or 8,300. And I think he's going to break 35 fantasy points tonight. So I think he's a solid cash play. And I don't say that very often about Carmelo. But the matchup that he's got, it looks great. I mean, I really love him against the likes of Hollis Jefferson or Joe Johnson, or even if a Thad goes on him. I don't think Thad's adept enough on the defensive end to be able to cover Melo. So I think he's going to throw up a lot of shots. I think he's going to have a nice night, but definitely not a must play. Kristaps Porzingis. I hope I'm saying that right. Ownership's going to be like fucking 55% because for some reason everyone in fucking daily fantasy wants to suck Porzingis' dick. I don't fucking understand it. The guy's too expensive. Yeah, he puts up decent lines, and yeah, he has nice upside. But I don't know why the fuck you trust this guy in cash games at over 7K. 6K, I paid for him. 6,500, I don't mind paying for him in a good matchup. This is a shitty matchup. He's too expensive. He's got Thad Young on him. maybe he'll get 35 to 40 fantasy points. It's possible, but I'm not going to risk, my money on a guy like Porzingis tonight. So at your own risk, go ahead and be like the rest of the cocksuckers and fucking roster the guy. But let's move on to Milwaukee at Detroit. Another ugly over-under, 193 and a 6.5 point spread. From Milwaukee, Bayless and Mayo are the only guys I would consider looking at, and there's a lot better value out there tonight. I think they make for nice tournament plays. If you want to plug in a Mayo or a Bayless here and there, Bayless has shown that he has 40 fantasy point upside, but lately he's been a piece of shit, and I really don't want to take a chance. Kids sat Bayless for an entire game and didn't even fucking tell anyone he was going to do it. So another reason I hate that fucking bald piece of shit Jason Kidd. Detroit, the Pistons. Stanley Johnson's a fine tournament play. I'm not going to touch him in cash, but I have him projected to do pretty well tonight. He could put up another massive line like he did a couple nights ago. Andre Drummond is a nice play, but obviously I'm going with Clint Capella at the center tonight on FanDuel. So if you're on DraftKings or something like that and you want to pair Drummond with Capella, there's worse plays out there, and he has a nice matchup. So Reggie Jackson coming off a monster game, a monster 2 games, I think. He's still tournament only for me. I don't trust him. I don't trust his minutes. Stan Van Gundy, I like his brother when he announces, but I can't stand that fat fuck. His rotations have gotten a little better this year. He plays Drummond 40 minutes, so that's cool. But everyone else outside of Morris and Pope, I mean, you look at Reggie, he's one of those guys that's gets inconsistent minutes, and I don't really know. If he's not performing, he won't hesitate to pull him. Marcus Morris coming off a big game, but his price is too high for me. I'm not going to touch him. They had a plus matchup against the Suns, and I think that's why he did well there. Not really a plus matchup here. Pope and Ilyasova, I guess if they fit, you can play them. I'm not real high on either guy, but I think they'll approach value like they always do. Let's move on to the Lakers at the Hawks. 11.5 point spread, which is scary as hell on a 6-game slate, and a 203 over-under. Let's look at the Lakers. I mean, real quick, Kobe's too expensive on FanDuel. I think he's close to $7K now. I don't know why they do this, but they price some guys based on their name. Aldridge, for example, was high for like the entire fucking season. He hasn't done shit. So, not touching Kobe. Randall, I might play him in a tournament. Clarkson, not the worst play in the world, but probably not going to touch him in cash unless I just have to fit in a mid-range there on a lineup that I love. Lou Williams, don't fucking go there. Just like I said with Luis Scola last night, the guy is not a cash play. You want to enter him in a tournament, fine. People are going to see all his points last game, but Lou Williams doesn't get 7 fucking steals very often, so not real big on that. The Atlanta Hawks, there's a lot to like here. But don't overexert yourself on the Hawks and end up getting fucked by a blowout. I'll roster one Hawk tonight, and it's probably going to be Jeff Teague. Teague's the best play in this game. The blowout concerns me, but the Lakers are so bad against point guards, and Teague's price is so depressed. I feel like he's going to reach value before that happens. So let's move on to Millsap. Millsap can really fuck you in a blowout. I mean, I've had it happen to me before. So I'm not going to touch him, even though I really like that he could get 45 to 50 fantasy points tonight if the game stays close. Horford, my second favorite center play, but my first favorite Capella is such a lock that it's not even worth consideration. Horford, probably my number 1 tournament play of the night. So keep an eye on that. I think he probably breaks 40 fantasy points, and his price is also way down. Korver and Thabo, if you need to fit someone in at one of those spots, shooting guard or small forward, I think either one of those guys will probably do fine. But again, the blowout could really depress their value. Let's move on to the Rockets at the Mavericks. You got a 210.5 over-under. It's the second highest of the night. And a 5.5 point spread. The Mavs are at home. I think that's why the spread is that large. And guys like Parsons and Wes Matthews are finally shaping into form. Let's start with the Rockets. You got James Harden, obviously. I like him here, but I don't love him. I think I'd prefer to play LeBron and Anthony Davis tonight. no player should request a minute's decrease. You get paid millions of fucking dollars to go out and play a game. You're a fucking grown man. You get to play a game for a living, and you're bitching about minutes. You're a professional fucking athlete. Get out there and play the fucking game. If I was a coach, I would bench this piece of shit. But obviously it's James Harden and players run the NBA. So it sounds like a bad situation when you have a whiny player like that complaining about his minutes to the media and not even bringing it to the fucking coach. So I hate Harden. I always have. I don't fear the beard. I think he's a little bitch. That being said, I still might roster him tonight. Just kind of depends. But so far, looking Davis and LeBron and probably a bunch of mid-tier players with some value. Capella, lock. That's all you got to say. Howard's out. Capella's a lock. If you play him, you won't be disappointed. Patrick Beverley. If you need value at point guard, if you want to go that route, I think he's a great play. I think he's going to reach value. He's going to play a ton of minutes with them shopping Ty Lawson. So no issues there. Moving on to the Mavericks, you got Dirk Nowitzki. Love his matchup. If there's no Dwight, that means that Capella's playing center. Capella's going to guard Pachulia and Terrence Jones and other shitheads like that at the power forward spot are going to have to try to guard Dirk, and they're not going to be able to. I saw a statistic, I think it was yesterday, that showed that in clutch field goal attempts this season, Dirk is shooting 65%, and that's number one in the league. I don't know what's classified as a clutch field goal attempt, but I would assume it has something to do with how close the game is and how much time's left. Basically, if it's close, which I expect it to be down the stretch, Dirk's going to get all the shots. And he's been playing about 30 minutes and averaging around 30 fantasy points. So at his price point, he's one of the safest cash plays I've seen in a while. Wes Matthews, his price is still down at the 4,800 mark, which I love. I've been rostering him pretty consistently. He's starting to find his shot. And on top of that, he's starting to not have a minutes limit at all. He played over 40 minutes last game, and I expect him to play close to 40 minutes tonight. And he's going to guard Harden, which is like an automatic 3 or 4 steals every game because Harden has the ball in his hands so much. So look for Wes Matthews to rack up about 3 steals. And on the offensive end, with Beverly shutting down Darren Williams, look for Matthews to get a bunch of open looks and be able to drive and pretty much get whatever he wants on the beard. Raymond Felton and Devin Harris with J.J. Barea still being out. They're great values at point guard, and they're both way more offensive than Patrick Beverly. I think Harris is the better value as far as points per dollar that you're spending on him, but I think Felton will get you more fantasy points. So just kind of depends if you want to go that route. I don't think I'm going to pay down that far at point guard, but if you want to or try him out in a tournament, I'm all for it. Let's move on to the last game of the night. It's the Cavaliers at the Pelicans. Surprisingly, it's only a 5-point spread, and the over-under is 208, which is, I believe, the third highest spread of the night. LeBron is probably the greatest cash play on the slate. I love LeBron, especially tonight. There's nobody on the Pelicans that can guard him, and Davis probably the only one that could try, and I don't see them putting Davis on LeBron. So LeBron's a great cash game play, should be solid for 45 fantasy points, which is close enough to value on a 6-game slate where you can pretty much plug him in. Kevin Love should be solid. I expect him to get around 35 fantasy points, but there's other options that I like more and other values that I feel like are a better bang for my buck. J.R. Smith's been insanely consistent. I didn't think those words would ever come out of my mouth, but that tattooed fuck has really done a good job of being a great daily fantasy player so far this year. He's getting about 40 minutes a game, it looks like. If you don't want to pay up for Harden, which I might not do tonight, I really don't mind the J.R. Smith-Wes Matthews stack in cash, especially if you don't want to pay up for somebody like Beal. J.R. Smith and Wes Matthews should combined equal value, if not beat it tonight. So Decent little shooting guard combo that you can use. The New Orleans Pelicans, they've been playing a lot better since they got Tyreek Evans back. Drew Holiday's a go tonight, and basically what that means to me is I'm fading their entire fucking backcourt. It's so mucked up with Norris Cole and Drew and Ish Smith and Tyreek Evans. I think a lot of guys will play Evans tonight. I think he'll be around 15 to 20% owned. And I think he'll have a decent game, but I don't think it's someone that I'm going to roster because I don't think he's going to go nuts. I think this is going to be the Anthony Davis show. Love trying to defend Anthony Davis is probably the funniest fucking joke I've ever heard. And really, anyone that they have at center isn't going to be able to come out and handle Davis on the perimeter. So Anthony Davis should get close to 60 fantasy points tonight, if not break 60 fantasy points. Close game, he'll be the guy. And that's pretty much it from this game. LeBron and Davis with maybe the random J.R. Smith thrown in there. Feel free to tweet me your questions today. Make sure you follow me. Obviously, we had a rough day yesterday, but I was right on a bunch of things. The Celtics backcourt, and there were others, but obviously the Paul George and DeMarcus Cousins fucking off all our lineups is something that I don't think anyone could predict. And the alternatives, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook played like shit too. So just an off night. Scores were low. I mean, I think I got a 230 something and actually came close to breaking the cash line. So be sure to follow me. Make sure to like, subscribe. I am still doing lineups if anybody wants to look at that. But thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day, and holler at you tomorrow.